Okay, guys, here comes the highlight of the entire film. I want you to watch really closely.
I have been feeling very sad recently. The students themselves lack a developed sense of democracy. To be honest, from the day I called for a hunger strike, I knew we would not get any results. Certain people, certain causes are bound to fail. I have been very clear about this all along, but I've made an effort to present a staunch image, to show that we were striving for victory. But deep down, I knew it was all futile. The more involved I got, the sadder I became. I already felt this back in April. All along, I've kept it to myself, because being Chinese, I felt I shouldn't badmouth the Chinese. But I can't help thinking sometimes, and I might as well say it. You, the Chinese, you are not worth my struggle. You are not worth my sacrifice. But then, I can also see that in this movement, there are many people who do have a conscience. There are many decent people among the students, workers, citizens, and intellectuals. The students keep asking, what should we do next? What can we accomplish? I feel so sad. Because how can I tell them that what we are actually hoping for is bloodshed? For the moment when the government has no choice but to brazenly butcher the people. Only when the square is awash with blood will the people of China open their eyes. Only then will they really be united. But how can I explain any of this to my fellow students? And what is truly sad is that some students and some famous, well-connected people are working hard to help the government, to prevent it from taking such measures. For the sake of their selfish interests and their private dealings, they are trying to cause our movement to collapse and get us out of the square before the government becomes so desperate that it takes action. If we allow the movement to collapse on its own, then the government will be able to wipe out all the leaders of the movement, as well as those leaders in the party and in the military who dare to oppose them, who represent the people. Deng Xiaoping has made it very clear that there is a small handful of people not only in the party and in society, but also among the students. That's why I feel so sad, because I can't say all this to my fellow students. I can't tell them straight out that we must use our blood and our lives to call on the people to rise up. Of course, the students will be willing, but they are still such young children. Are you going to stay in the square yourself? No, I won't. Why? Because my situation is different. My name is on the government's hit list. I'm not going to let myself be destroyed by this government. I want to live. Anyway, that's how I feel about it. I don't know if people will say I'm selfish. I believe that others have to continue the work I have started. A democracy movement can't succeed with only one person.
You have no idea how angry I am after I watched this as a Chinese person, even though I was not born at the time. You, the Chinese, you are not worth my struggle. You are not worth my sacrifice. This is the people who think she's fighting for democracy, who's representing the people. What we're hoping for is bloodshed. And she won't stay in the square because her situation is different and she wants to live. What about the other kids? She knowingly manipulated people to die so she can benefit from it. She deserves to go to hell.
I believe that what the Chinese lack is not ideals, but the means through which to realize them. Not courage, but the wisdom necessary to achieve their goal. What the Chinese lack is not a heart, but a mind.
First of all, he is a perfect example of everything that the Chinese people does not want. And secondly, who the fuck are you?
How did you raise the money in Hong Kong?
Several, many ways. For example, there was one concert for the democracy in China. In that concert alone, 14 million Hong Kong dollars.
14 million Hong Kong dollars is about 1.8 million US dollars. And we're talking about the money in 1989. I just want to briefly point this out because I have more analysis about this number after we go through the film.
我具体不知道绑架这个事件，但是我在这之前，我听到了一些反应，一些同学，特别是学术团同学的反应，他们对查爱玲和这个李路以及冯春德同学的几位领导同志吧，他们对工作上的失误以及财务上的混乱表示有很多的意见。
我想，种种迹象表明，这是一场有组织、有预谋的计划。种种迹象表明，而且我们已经得到一些消息，就政府已经在收买一批学生中的便捷分子，主要他们想大力的破坏和削减广场的组织领导力量，让整个葬送我们这场学运。
Now we know this bitch is trustworthy. She's clearly fabricating this kidnapping case to frame the government. She was not kidnapped. She was not hurt. There's no evidence or resources whatsoever. She just threw it at the government.
One day, a friend of mine, who was a fairly well-known intellectual, came to see me. I told him that I had been going to the square every day to persuade all of my students to leave. But he said the students should not leave. He said, with the students at the front lines, we'll be safe. Once the students withdraw, the government will come after the intellectuals. I was furious. I said, so you want the students to shield you from danger? What right do you have to hide behind them? Why don't you try living in the square like that? It's easy for you to talk, never missing a meal and sleeping in your own comfortable home.
So what we're seeing here is the true nature of this movement at this point, which is a bunch of people doing careful calculations about personal interests, whether the student leaders or these intellectuals. Everyone is trying to use someone else as the pawns in the name of democracy, even though no one cares about the people, no one cares about other people.
Most of the troops weren't in combat gear, but people were outraged to find that some were actually armed. Protesters confiscated guns, cattle prods, cleavers, and knives, and displayed them as proof that the government intended to use violence. Then they turned the weapons over to the city police.
The narrative sounds like it's nothing, but I want you to put this into perspective. Imagine in the United States, protesters try to take the weapons from the police or from the military. What would happen to them? No one died in this, protesters confiscating the weapon from the People's Liberation Army. I think that's one more evidence to show that how much the Chinese government do not want to kill its own people, even though what they're doing here is really out of the line. I can guarantee you in any of the Western countries, if this happens, some people will be shot dead. And I also don't buy the claim that they handed over to the police. Not only does it make no sense for them to differentiate the police from the military, both of which are government's forces to use against them, but also we'll see in this film later on that this claim is not true.
At the fringes of the singing match, nervous soldiers collided with excited citizens. Those hurt rushed to the square to tell their stories.
Is it just me, or is it actually suspicious that with such a bloody face, he seemed to be quite conscious and walking just fine, and the first thing he thought of was not to go to the hospital, but to show up in front of the foreign reporters?
The huge square, which had been filled with so many people, suddenly was emptying before my eyes. Only those of us on the monument remained.
We're slowly getting closer to the very important night, the night of June 3rd, or the morning of June 4th, which the Western media claim so many people died in the square. We heard it from Liu Xiaobo. As long as the warning from the government was announced on the square, most people just left.
One guy had a semi-automatic rifle. Some student guards and I took it from him. I was terrified. If any gunshots were fired from the monument, the troops would have had an excuse to gun everybody down.
This is what I was talking about. Where does this weapon come from? They didn't hand the weapons to the police like this documentary claimed. Other resources actually support that they not only have this one weapon, but they have a lot more.
Chai Ling
told us she had heard that leading government reformers hoped that the students would stay on the square until daybreak. So Liu Xiaobo told her, I don't care if it's true or not, but no leader has the right to gamble with thousands of students' lives at the square.
Remember when Chai Ling said that what she's hoping for is bloodshed? She meant it.
At dawn on June 4th, after occupying the square for more than 3 weeks, all the remaining students and their teachers and supporters left Tiananmen Square.
So it's clear there's no massacre at Tiananmen Square. The students left peacefully. If anything, the only massacre there was all the trash and garbage they left at the square. But no one died there.
Almost as soon as the struggle over Tiananmen Square ended, the struggle over the story of what happened there began. The official account was this: no one had died during the clearing of the square at dawn on June 4th. In the approaches to the square, some ruffians who had incited counter-revolutionary violence had been killed, as had a small number of innocent bystanders.
Okay, this is the Chinese government's official account of the event. And so far, everything we've seen support their claim.
Protesters who had been at the square gave differing accounts of what had happened. Chai Ling, hiding somewhere in China, sent her story out via Hong Kong.
And now here is the full 40-minute message in which Chai Ling recounts what happened between June 3rd and June the 4th.
我是柴玲，保卫天安门指挥部总指挥，我还活着。自6月2号到6月4号这段时间，整个广场的情况，我想我是最有资格的评论家。可是我们事后才知道，仍然有一些同学，他们对这个政府、对这支军队还抱有希望。 他们以为顶多是军队把大家强行的架走，他们太疲劳了，还在帐篷里酣睡的时候，坦克已经把他们点成了肉饼。有人说同学死了200多。 也有人讲，整个广场已经死了4000多。
Regardless of the fact that we all know how credible she is based on the things she said, despite she claiming that she is the most qualified person to recite what happened, everything she said afterwards was at best second-hand information, and there are no credible sources to verify it. But what I wanted to pay attention is that her account of the 200 to 4,000 casualties at the Tiananmen Square is one that is almost used by every Western media. And this is their original source.
Some people said that 200 died in the square, and others claimed that 2,000 died there. There are also stories of tanks in the square running over students who were trying to leave. I have to say that I did not see any of that. I don't know where those people did. I myself was in the square until 6:30 in the morning. I kept thinking, are we going to use lies to attack an enemy who lies? Aren't facts powerful enough? To tell lies against our enemy's lies only satisfies our need to vent our anger. But it's a dangerous thing to do. Maybe your lies will be exposed, and you'll be powerless to fight your enemy.
What more can I say? He said everything in the most powerful way possible.
State ceremonies paid tribute to the soldiers who died and honored their families.
So this film does acknowledge the fact that there were soldiers died. And here is my question. If the true event is like what Western media has been telling you, which is the Chinese army shoot at peaceful protesters indiscriminately, then how would soldiers die? How would peaceful protesters and bystanders have the capability to hit back at the soldiers?
After my son's death, I became suicidal. I had to struggle to get through each day.
Her only role in this film is to show the audience that someone actually died in the event. I understand she is very sad, and it's a very smart choice for the film to include her in the mix because people tend to feel empathetic towards the weak. But I want to be fair and point out that just because your son died does not mean that government is tyranny. We have to look into the circumstances and put things into perspective. He went out knowingly there is a martial law, and knowingly the troops are coming in. So, if anything like this happens in the West, in the United States, in the UK, if you go out during a curfew or a martial law declared, and if you get shot, you get shot. That's it, because your existence under such circumstances is illegal itself. I know there are many people who were out that night that did not get shot. Maybe he was actively fighting with the army, or maybe he was just a very unlucky bystander that became a collateral damage. Whichever may be the case, it's unfair to blame the government totally for his death, when he should not be out in the first place. The Gate of Heavenly Peace offered us a lot of valuable information about the event at Tiananmen Square in 1989, but because of its anti-China rhetoric, it intentionally left a lot of information out as well. In the next video, I'll share more resources with you so we can have a better understanding of what happened. I'll see you there.